Hello chess friends and welcome to Azarov's chess channel and welcome to our French defense series. So in this series we're covering all of the possible lines that can happen to you in this very nice and positional opening, and today we're continuing our series with the part 6. So we're continuing with this so-called burn variation of the French defense. So if you have followed my YouTube chess channel more, in the first 3 videos of my French defense series I've covered some lines, how to beat the French defense, and then after that we started with the introduction video and with the so-called classical or Steinitz variation. Now we're already in this part 6 in which we are analyzing this so-called burn variation, as I said. So but before we start to do this video, I wanted to explain you something. I've been asked now yesterday by one of my followers, by really one of my friends. He's not my follower, he's my friend, Brock Henry from the USA. He asked me, why do we analyze so many French defense games? Why did you start this series? I really want you to hear this. It's really a cool story because I had my troubles. That's why I started the French defense. Believe me or not, this is what kind of a psychopath I am when it comes to opening preparation. So I had my troubles. I'm a d4 player. Let me explain you this. When I played the move d4 and my opponent responded the move with the move e6, most of the times I play the move c4 because there is this line that I don't like, and it's the move f5. And it's this particular line when my opponent plays the move knight d6, knight to d7, knight to f6, maybe bishop to e7, sort of a Dutch defense style, but it's really a flexible position, and I've lost many games in this particular game. And my problem was that when I face the Dutch defense, the classical Dutch defense, my opponent opens with the move f5, and I play most of the times the so-called fianchetto attack with the move g3 and then bishop to g2. But that's not possible to play immediately the move after the move d4, d4 and the move e6, g3. I'm not familiar with this line, so I wanted to start something new. I wanted to play against this move e6, e4. So believe me or not, that's why we are studying the French defense, because I had my troubles to analyze this particular line. So as I said, this is what I'm doing. I'm always trying to search for new lines, for better opening preparations, and of course I want to share everything with you. So as I said, we are continuing now. This is really the reason why I started the series, believe me or not. So we're playing now the so-called burn variation. In the previous videos we've analyzed the classical or Steinitz variation, but today, as I said, we're doing this line as promised. So d4, we have d5, and now if your opponent plays the move knight to c3. In order to get a better understanding, please, as I always like to say in my series, watch this series from the first video, then the second video, third, and so on, because if you want to better understand this video, you have to really be familiar with the common strategies that I've explained in my previous videos. So after the move knight to c3, we have the move knight to f6, and now after bishop to g5, now my recommendation is to play the move d takes e4. So I wouldn't suggest you here to play the move bishop to e7. It can be, of course, a normal line, but if we see now the position after potential e5 move, we have to remove the knight somewhere, maybe knight to d7, bishop takes e7, queen to e7, and we have always evaluated the French from this common strategies, so that's why it's very important to watch the series from the beginning. After the move queen to e7, I just wanted to evaluate the position for yourself, which light square bishop, for instance, is better. So you see, this light square bishop is blocked out by its own pawns, so you traded off basically your good bishop on e7 for a bad bishop of your opponent. And here bishop to c8, this bishop on c8 is so blocked out. You see, white has, of course, the ability to develop this bishop on a very active square on bishop to d3, can proceed here with the move f4, and will continue the game with the so powerful pawn central control that you will be blocked out by this pawn. So it's really a not good line, I think, here for black to play. So that's why don't make that mistake. Let's go back here after move knight to f6 and bishop to g5. First of all, I think you should really release the pressure in the center with the move d takes e4. It's very important to undermine the pressure now in the center. Okay, white has, of course, some activities, but it's really this recommended line that I'll show you today. So after knight takes e4, bishop to e7, and now today we'll analyze this line after bishop takes f6. So what I don't want you to do here also is to take with the bishop. First of all, after the move bishop to f6, you will have some troubles to kick away this knight on e4. This will be a very tough battle because white doesn't need to take your bishop. That's the main problem of this opening. White can play maybe something like c3, queen to d2, really healthy developing, knight to f3, bishop to d3, and really have this very nice attack on light squares. All of these pieces would be on light squares, and again you would continue the game with a bad bishop on c8. This is also a bad bishop because it's blocked out by this pawn chain here on d4, c3, and b2. So here my recommendation after the move bishop to f6 is to take with the pawn, g takes f6, because we have now a new position. You have double pawn, but don't be scared about this position. I'll explain you the strategies about this position. When you know the strategy about the position, it's much more easier to find the best next move. So that's why I don't like, for instance, analyze games just by we play this, then we play this. If we play this, then we play this. So it's really not my style. It's really important to, first of all, to understand the strategy of this particular position. What we have as an advantage is here the bishop pair. And the bishops love really asymmetrical pawn structure. So far we have created the asymmetrical pawn structure. So this pawn structure is mobile, this pawn structure can be opened, this pawn structure is really flexible. So for these bishops it could be a good position. But what we don't like, of course, is this double pawn. But still we can develop this bishop on e7 with the potential move f5. Still, we can crack the position in the center with the potential c5 move because now then the bishop can go maybe on an active square. And still, I believe even after b6, c5, bishop to b7 is a possibility. Knight to d7 as a defensive strategy is also a good idea. So we would still have the normal ideas to develop the minor pieces, and still we could continue with the powerful bishop pair. But here is the tricky part. What I'm suggesting here in this particular opening is to play on this king in the center position. So there is this deep strategy in this particular position because first of all, we should stay as much as we can with the king in the center. That's the whole idea of this particular opening. What we should also do, for instance, in this position, is to trade off the queens. If the queens are off the board here, if you could just imagine this position without the queens, then I think we could have a really good position. The bishop could play. But when the queens are on the board, then there are always these tactical threats. We have double pawns, which are weaknesses, of course. For instance, we have here this f6 weakness. We have also here the g7 weakness. So the queen combined with the knight always works better than a bishop and a queen. So that's why trading off the queens is also a very powerful idea in this position. So what we should do is the centralization of pieces. So it means we should try maybe to get our bishop maybe to d5, f5, maybe even e5. So we should try to play with our pieces towards the center, because the activity of that pieces is much more powerful. And what your opponent will probably not do is try to open the position. So that's why you can stay really with the king in the center for a little bit longer, because if the position gets too open, then the bishops will be activated. So your opponent, when he gives up a bishop in an early stage of the game, he doesn't want to keep the position open. He wants to somehow keep the position compact and close. So that's why it's very important to realize this idea of the king in the center situation. I'll explain you now in two examples. The first example, it's a game played by Fabien Libiszewski against Harikrishna, and here black plays really with a great idea to stay with the king in the center. So after the move knight to f3, which is the common idea to develop the knight, we have the common move f5. This is very important. Now the knight will be kicked away to c3, and we have now the opportunity to play bishop to f6, and really we would have a great activity with our bishop. But as I said, it's very risky for white maybe to play the move d5 immediately, because if the position opens, then suddenly this bishop is a monster bishop. So that's why white is trying here to keep the position compact, but this idea of white allows you basically to stay with the king further in the center. So here a6, a very normal idea, because bishop to b5 could be an attacking possibility, but it's a very nice idea here by Harikrishna, because he understands the position. What white is not going to do probably in this game is to castle on the king side, because when white castles on the king side, then we would have the opportunity to maybe occupy this g file with our rook, activate the bishop somewhere, maybe b6, bishop to b7, and again you see this bishop on b7 would aim against this g2, rook to g2, maybe something like h5, h4. So that's why white is not going to go and castle on the king side. White is going to castle on the queen side. And if we have now these two elements, we want to stay with the king in the center, and our opponent will castle probably on the queen side. This move a6 comes with the idea that we are preparing already the move b5. We want to play b5, b4, then really to kick away the knight, and we would have a very nice attack against our opponent's king that will probably, as I said, castle on the queen side. So queen to e2, we see now b5, a very important move now. If white plays something like a4 in order to prevent this idea, we can even, I believe, sacrifice some pawns, but that's only possible if white castles. But we can sometimes sacrifice some pawns in order to open files, open diagonals for our bishops. Here in the game b5, you see castling, and now b4. Harikrishna gets some space, knight to a4, and we have now queen to d5. That's what I meant. Whenever we have the opportunity to centralize the piece, do it, because your opponent, if he wants, for instance, to kick away the queen, he has to play something like c4, pardon me, and after maybe b takes c3, okay, knight to c3. Could maybe kick away the knight, but again, it's not such a powerful idea, because we can simply play queen to d7, and again the position gets more and more open because your opponent was trying to kick you away. The position is now even better for the bishops, because now the idea is to play bishop to b7, maybe bishop to f6, rook to g8 again, maybe get this rook to g4, maybe try to remaneuver the rook all over the board. So as I said, when your opponent is trying to kick away you, then he's opening the position further. So that's why this move queen to d5 I really like by Harikrishna. We have here b3, and now knight to d7, very important move, because we want to maybe in some occasions play the c5, but that's so far not possible because the rook is attacking the queen. What we could also do is maybe knight to f6 and knight to e4. So in the game, queen to e3 was played, rook to g8. You see this idea, it prevents this bishop to develop. Here rook to g1, and we have now bishop to b7, bishop to c4, and now comes this idea, queen to e4. Let's just imagine this position. After queen takes e4, bishop takes e4, or even f takes e4 is a good move, because now you see when the queens are off the board, I don't think that our king is endangered here. So that's why you should really memorize this idea. When you have this double pawn structure, the bishop pair on the board, it's very important to stay with the king in the center, at least for a while. When the position opens, maybe then to escape with the king and castle, but then we have a new position in which you can activate your bishop. So it's really a tricky idea. I know it's maybe sometimes too complicated to explain, but I hope really that you realize this idea. So after here queen to e4, here white doesn't want to trade off the queens, play queen to d2, because white wants to keep the queens on the board, maybe finally to split and open the position with the move d5, but it's a little bit too late, because here Harikrishna plays on a very interesting idea. The idea is here to take bishop takes f3 and maybe to give up the queen for both of the rooks, but it would be again a bad position here for white, I think. So in the game h3 was played, we have queen to a4, bishop to e2, preventing this idea, bishop takes f3, queen to g6, hiding with our queen, but still this queen can be activated with some potential f4 moves. But now our main goal is probably here to play the move bishop to f6 or knight to f6, knight to e4. If this knight comes on this very active square, this is a perfect supported knight. So here king to b1, queen to f6, knight to e1, and now we have queen to g5, again with the same idea. We're chasing our opponent's queen on the board. If that happens, if we trade off the queens, then we have really a great and simplified line. So f4, queen to g3. Here Harikrishna plays towards our opponent's other side of the board, so now the queen is more active. Knight to d3, and now a5, we have f6. White is annoyed by this space that black has created, but simply knight to f6. As I said, our main goal is this move knight to e4. Here we have c takes b4, a takes b4, and again I'm pointing out here, if for instance white tries to take out this pawn pawn on b4. So far it's not possible because you see you get this tactic knight to e4. You have to move the queen somewhere. Wherever you move the queen, then of course we can take the queen and then after the knight. So Harikrishna realized this tactical problem, so it was very tricky idea. So white cannot take. This b4 pawn is still on the board. This pawn is creating really this important space advantage. In the game, queen to c1 was played, and now bishop to d6, a very nice centralizing move. Knight to c5, and now we have bishop to d5, bishop to f3, and now bishop to f4. In this position, white resigned. Okay, here Harikrishna took a pawn, but it was really a bad position anyway. Whatever you do, if you try to get with the queen, still we have the possibility really to play this move. Bishop to f3, maybe here to take the rook, or we can always play something like knight to e4, whatever you like. But I think this is a perfect position here for black. But notice that this king is still in the center on e8 because white was really scared to trade off the queens. White was really scared to open the position. So let's see now another example. It's a game played by Vugar Gashimov against Vishy Anand. Here Vishy Anand shows really the potential of this burn variation of the French defense. D4, E4, E6, D4, D5, knight to C3, knight to F6 again, bishop to G5. We have again D takes E4, this recommended line, knight takes E4, and now bishop to E7, bishop takes F6, G takes F6, and now queen to D3. So here Vishy Anand faces a new problem that the queen is getting out early. It prepares, of course, the queenside castling idea. A6, b5 is maybe now too slow, so that's why Vishy plays simply knight to c6, attacking this d4 weakness. If white tries maybe something like c3, this is already a pawn move that weakens the pawn structure in front of the king. So as I said, white will probably castle on the queen side. So this move c3 weakens the pawn structure. It could be playable maybe for white, but as I said, it's a really risky choice. So after castling, Vishy played knight to b4, attacking the queen. We have queen to b3, and again this idea queen to d5, really trading off the queens, simplifying the position. When the queens are off the board, this is a perfect position for the bishop. So bishop, queen takes d5, knight takes d5. We have bishop to c4. So you see, even if you kick away this knight, it's not a good position here for white because we can simply play knight to f4. The knight will always find a way into the game. What we want to do is activate our bishops, but this c4 doesn't bring white so much. I think again it blocks out the bishop's activity. So here again white would be forced to play maybe something like g3. But again, a new pawn move really opens the position, weakens the pawn structure. So again, it's a better position for white. So after the move bishop to c4, Vishy played knight to b6, attacking the bishop, bishop to b5, c6, bishop to e2, and now again this idea f5. We have knight to g3, we have c5, splitting pawns, and now after bishop to b5, we have knight to d7. We have a very interesting idea by Gashimov. It's the move d5, but again Vishy plays simply a6, kicking away the bishop, and again I'm pointing out that this king is still in the center. So after bishop to e2, knight to f6, we have d takes e6, f takes e6, and now knight to h3. We have b5. Vishy expands on the queen side, rook to e1, and now simply rook to b8. We have knight to h5. We have rook to g6. A very interesting idea here by Vishy Anand, because what he wants to do is compete with this rook on the d file, because our bishop is still bad on c8, but it can be developed on b7. White needs to prevent this idea, but at least, as I said, this is really a dynamic and an open position, so bishops love this kind of position. So it's really a great idea, as I said in the beginning, to trade off the queens. Now there are at least not so many tactical threats against your king. So king to b1, we have rook to g8, knight to f4, and now a very nice move by Vishy. Here king to f7, we have knight takes f6, king takes f6, and now rook to d3, bishop to d6, attacking the knight. We have knight to h5, king to f7, we have rook to e1, and now king to e7. So what we want to do again in this position is maybe get rid of these rooks also, because then we would again simplify the position. Going into an endgame where the pawns are on both sides is perfectly fine again for the bishops, because this will be a favorable endgame here for black. So that's why white has to play this game very, very calm. Here in the game Vichy tried rook takes g2. We have knight takes g3, knight to g3, and now after bishop takes g3, rook takes h7 first, but it's not a problematic check because we can hide with our king to f6, h takes g3, and now rook takes f2. Here black has really a winning position. Still we have this problems of these bishops, but now at least this rook is covering this f3 square, and again it was, I think, a completely winning endgame here for Vichy. But Vugar Gashimov tried to continue this game with bishop to h5. We have now finally bishop to b7, rook to e1, and now very nice move, bishop to e4, attacking this weakness. We have king rook to f7 attacking the king, but again no perpetuals are possible. Bishop to e8 had to be played, and now very nice move, rook to d6. Vichy Anand has the opportunity to double up rooks. King to c1, rook to d2. We have g4, but it's a little bit too late because we have now this idea, bishop takes c2. After g takes f5, we have bishop takes f5, rook to f1, and now Vichy takes another pawn, rook takes f2, rook takes f2, and in this position white resigned. It's simply too much material. You see how Vichy played this game very, very easily, I believe, again with the same idea, centralization of pieces, trading of queens, activating the bishop's ideas, simplification ideas, great strategies that the legendary Vichy Anand applied here. So as I said, it's really similar to this idea also. So here in this position, Harikrishna tried to chase a little bit white's queen, tried to simplify the position. White didn't allow this idea, but then white made some inaccuracies which opened the position for the bishops, and it was a perfect endgame then by Harikrishna. So okay, I hope that you realize these ideas. We'll continue with this burn variation because there are many sidelines too that white can play, so we'll try to see what are the problems also of this position. But this ideas that I said to you, these ideas to play with the king in the center, to the centralization of pieces, and this trading queens idea, it basically works for every burn line that we'll try in the series. So as I said, so far notice that it's really possible to apply these strategies and surprise your opponent with this king in the center position, for instance. So okay, I hope that you realize these ideas, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Meanwhile, you can watch my other French defense series videos. As I said, watch these videos from the beginning, from the first video, second video, and so on. And if you want to see more of these videos, check out my link of the French defense series. As I said, here is the link. And if you have troubles to play against d4, you can check out my King's Indian and Nimzo Indian series, in which I showed you a positional and a tactical way how to play against d4. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.